It's almost kickoff between Penn State and West Virginia, but that doesn't mean there isn't football on the horizon tonight. College football week 1 kicks off with some Thursday night games, and of course Friday means high school football, and then Saturday Penn State is at West Virginia. We're going to be covering most of that. You can watch football on your own if it's not Penn State football or football recruiting. We got you covered for the rest. Ryan Snyder and Sean Fitz, our recruiting experts, are here to discuss the upcoming slate of games, including Penn State's got a problem with recruiting in September. They don't really have any good home games to get fans into and recruits back to Happy Valley. So can they do some recruiting on the road? We're going to have that conversation, plus the latest in some news you need to know, and a game preview of the game from our experts here. Bunch of things. So if you want to get your thoughts on the show, drop them in the chat. We'll be talking to you throughout the show. And of course, we got a lot of great stuff coming from the guys here with their thoughts. Just want to introduce everybody so I can stop talking. Ryan, how are you doing so far this weekend? What's on your mind with Penn State football recruiting? What's the number one thing you're thinking about heading into the weekend?
Not really much recruiting wise, just watching the game, man. That's kind of what I'm more excited about. We'll hit up a high school game or two this weekend. Unfortunately, Harrisburg McDevitt is at the exact same time as Dovey and Penn State, so I don't know if I'll be making it out to that one, although I will be curious to probably watch that on my laptop. We'll see. But pretty slow in recruiting right now. There's not a whole lot, a couple offers going out, but it is all about the game on Saturday for the most part.
It's all about the game on Saturday, and for me, it's all about what we're doing around that game, and the best way to get in on that, Fitz, is how?
To sign up at bluewhiteillustrated.com, of course. Sorry, I thought you were leading me into an ad read, and I was like, oh, man. No, our kickoff sale, it's running out. We said it ended on Tuesday. It didn't. Guess what? It's gonna run out soon, though. So check it out. Promo code kickoff24. We have had a tremendous response. Appreciate the people that, of course, watch on the YouTube show, listen to our podcast. But, the real stuff is going to get you at bluewhiteillustrated.com. We've had a great offseason. We've had a great August of coverage. The stuff that James Franklin unveils this week or that last week or whenever it was, with injuries, with depth charts, with all that stuff, Blue White Illustrated people, you knew that going in. So we like our coverage. We would like you to like our coverage. We would like you to sign up. Promo code kickoff24.
I'm super excited to have a bunch of new people hanging out at the Lions Den, and hopefully a lot of new people here on the BWI YouTube channel. We've had a record week, I'd say, from the response. People are very excited for this game. Have another great preview coming up. We have sliced this thing in every possible way, but we're going to do it one more time, plus our game predictions coming up in a little bit. But Fitz, coming back to you, some of the news from the recruiting world that came out, it's been dribbling out. So anytime we get a Malachi Goodman update, we do want to talk about it here on the show. One of Penn State's top remaining 2025 targets. You wrote about this. So what are the highlights of what Penn State fans need to know today?
Yeah, one of the guys on 25, if you checked out yesterday, I had updates on 4 guys in the 2025 class. Not all are, at the forefront of the mind right now. So definitely check that out on bluewhiteillustrated.com. But Malachi Goodman, I think, is the one that's in everybody's sort of radar right now because he seems to be inching closer to a decision. Malachi is on his own time. This has been an interesting recruitment in the sense that there's been no really real initiative in terms of making a decision. Of course, he's not forced to make a decision until, well, he enrolls, but December is National Signing Day. But Penn State's still in it. Auburn's still in it. USC's still in it, but I really think it's coming down head to head, Penn State and Auburn. I know he likes both offensive line coaches, really big fan of Phil Troutwine, but likes both offensive line coaches at those schools, weighing the pros and cons, going to see if he's going to, where he's going to fit in. I know, one of Penn State's pitches here, Auburn's got 5 offensive line commits in this class. Penn State does not. And of course, Auburn's still going after Andrew Babalola. And I butchered that in Kansas. He's, of course, Michigan's out there, Stanford's out there, Auburn's out there, Oklahoma. So a bunch of different schools going after him, but he's a 5-star, so he's going to get the attention. But Penn State awaiting a decision on Malachi Goodman. Don't think it's going to come this week. He wanted to decide before his season. That's not going to happen as they open, I believe, tomorrow night against St. Peter's Prep. So that's not going to happen right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if in a week or two we're talking about a decision for Malachi Goodman.
How important is he to the recruiting efforts in 2025, Fitz? I think this is something that obviously he's a very good player. And then there's a kind of, I think, a split opinion on Penn State's recruiting along the offensive line so far in this particular class. So, just in your opinion, where do you think the class stands without him, and what can he do for that offensive line group?
Yeah, I think he's somewhere between really important and very important if you were going to put it on that scale. I mean, he's right at the top, right? Ryan, would you agree with that? He's
For
right at the
sure.
top of Penn
Oh
State.
yeah.
If you were having a big board, I think it would make sense to make him number one right now. Of course, still irons in the fire, and they're still going to check senior risers. They're going to check guys that maybe they'll circle back around with that they had on their radar before. But Goodman has been at or near the top of the board at offensive tackle for the duration, pretty much. Ryan, is that? I mean, they offered him last fall. Michael Carroll was in there, Zaire Addison was in there, a couple other guys circled through, but those three, including Goodman, were kind of the top guys from the start. So I'm going to continue to watch his progress this fall. I know he's a big guy. He moves pretty well. He's gonna have to do some reshaping when he gets there, when he gets to college. But Penn State has seen guys like him before thrive. So I'm interested to see how his progress goes, and if he picks Penn State, which I think Penn State's got a really good shot right now. It's Penn State or Auburn. You've got a ton of things going Penn State's way. Of course, Auburn has had a really really good class, really successful summer as well. But again, when you look at the facts here, he's been to Penn State a handful of times on his official visits in June, didn't go anywhere in July, which was really interesting to me because, he could have gone anywhere, could have gone wherever he wanted, it would have been on his own dime, but he could have gone anywhere, stayed home, and now he still hasn't made a decision. So he is on his own pace. He is like doing what he wants to do when he wants to do it. And I don't think we see a decision this week, but probably next week.
Ryan, any thoughts you want to add in here to this conversation, and generally your thoughts on Goodman?
Just for the most part, for a long time, I've wondered just how NIL will impact it. Right now, feedback seems to be like that's not at the very, very top. And look, outside of quarterbacks, maybe edge rushers, offensive tackles are some of the highest paid players out of high school right now. So when you see Auburn and you see USC and then you see Penn State, that always grabs my attention.
Yeah.
But again, the feedback has been pretty positive, I think, from at least a Penn State perspective, that does not seem to be the end all be all there. And that was something I've wondered just for months and months and months. So
And
we'll see.
and what a fascinating dynamic, Ryan, that the offensive linemen are some of the higher priced guys, because obviously it's a premium position. You find a left tackle out of high school and you can make him a 2 or 3 year starter. Obviously it's worth it, but Malachi Goodman's going to redshirt. Like these guys are going to go to the next level, and they've got developmental work to do. So that's a lot of money tied up in offensive linemen. So I'm very curious to see, especially, I mean, this is more from the Auburn side, because you look at they've got 5 guys, and a couple of them would probably demand high dollar. Babalola would really demand the top of that. But yeah, you said it. I don't think it's at the top of the list for Malachi Goodman. If it was, he probably would have committed to Auburn a while ago. So I think that's encouraging if you're on the Penn State side.
And he had offers. Like this is, it's not like, I talk often about how like NIL discussions really come strong at the end, but that doesn't seem to always be the case with Goodman, because I think a lot of schools were trying to get him on board months ago. I mean, there was definitely talk that, he had multiple 6-figure offers from other schools, not necessarily from Penn State. And
it's interesting.
He didn't act on it then. So that's encouraging.
So you guys make a great point about the differences between high school and college in that development and some of the bust rate among offensive linemen. But it does seem that college football recruiting and NIL kind of are mirroring the NFL salary cap, where certain positions that are very valuable in terms of their importance to the team command a high dollar figure. But there is a big difference between a rookie first round offensive tackle, taking a guy that maybe has some developmental traits and investing that money. This is pre-rookie wage scale sort of world for NIL recruiting, and it does provide I think a relief of what the differences at the two levels are in terms of the same problem, but addressing it in different ways. What would he do? The last question here, and I know this is kind of an obvious one, but class of 2025, adding an offensive tackle, adding a guy with the kind of pedigree you guys have been talking about, with the size and the length and the athleticism, and even if he has to work on some things, I guess I've just been monitoring the salvageability, as unfair as that might be, for this class of 2025. How far along does he push that, Ryan, if he were to commit to the Nittany Lions?
Certainly a great place to start. They're obviously they're at 23 commits now, and they're going to keep pushing for a lot of guys, who are committed elsewhere. So adding a top player like Malachi would be a great place to start with that. But, if they're going to finish this class how they want to finish it, which is maybe adding, another elite wide receiver. There's a couple guys. Obviously, we've talked about Brandon Finney a ton, corner who's committed to Oregon. Adding any of these guys, if they're able to flip them down the stretch, would certainly add to the stock of the class. But time will tell on that one. I think it's kind of one of those days. Like right now, it's just like let's see if they can get Malachi on board and take it from there.
We got a lot of great stuff coming up next. We're going to be talking about a good chunk of the show is previewing West Virginia from a bunch of different angles, including can they make some headway with some regional recruits. But right now, I want to tell you about My Perfect Franchise. My Perfect Franchise has been a sponsor here on the BWI Live Recruiting Show for quite a while now. You've probably heard the conversation, so you know what he does. My Perfect Franchise, Andy Ludicky puts you in franchise management that is best for you, that is best suited for your skills if you have those skills. So if you're interested in taking the next step in your career, and this is the why. I always focus on the why because I don't know the how, I don't know the what. I am not an expert, even though Andy has tried to give us a crash course on what businesses are good to run and what's good, and he's the guy that's going to get you that information. 404-973-9901. I know men's health care is a big thing right now, from testosterone replacement to a bunch of like man spas that do things like that. You can check all that out if that interests you. But really what you're doing is you're changing your future. The ability to dictate your own time comes from financial flexibility and not working for somebody else who dictates how many days off in a year you get. You can run a franchise or you can buy a business with Andy's help. He's got the flexibility to offer you both. So if you want the freedom to be your own person, give him a call, 404-973-9901, or the place you're going to go because nobody uses the phone anymore, Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Also want to talk to you about a new sponsor here for the 2024 season. That is Game Time. This is their app, or this is their website you can check out. I know James Franklin talked about earlier this month that it's hard to get a ticket to this game. Well, I'm looking at the Game Time. You're looking at the Game Time if you're here on the BWI Live YouTube show. There's a lot of tickets available. And the best thing about Game Time is they help you find the right tickets. Their Game Time picks give you the best possible deals. And you can see right there, the cheapest ticket right at the top of the screen, $192. Now, that's not cheap for sure, but it is going to get you the best possible deal, and it's going to sort by however you want to find it. This is like finding a walk-on that turns into a 5-star. That's what they do for you at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code ON3, ON3, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Guys, what time is it? Is Game Time. Let's get into the conversation. I didn't know if you wanted me to
say Game Time there.
We can do a call and response later. I just know that I get rolling and you guys generally mute yourselves so that there is no crossfire. So I didn't want to throw a random thing out there, but I'm going to do that next time. You opened yourself up for that.
T. Frank, I just love on Game Time the seat, the photos from the section. Yes. I mean, that's like crack to me. I can just walk around the stadium and look at all that stuff. So it's fantastic. The all-in pricing, of course, so you can see what the fees eventually are going to be. It's fantastic. So definitely appreciate Game Time for being with us, but also appreciate them for the platform that they put out.
Let's talk about the game itself. Penn State trying to do some maybe regional recruiting. Ryan, I think you wrote this earlier this week of some tracking players that Penn State's interested in that are going to be at the game. So let's just go through that and your opinion of how this can all work out for the Nittany Lions.
Well, to start, obviously Penn State cannot communicate with these guys when they are the road opponent. But when two schools are less than 200 miles apart and you are constantly kind of recruiting similar players, Penn State's kind of recruit a little bit on a higher level than West Virginia over the years, but obviously the Mountaineers are going to go after similar guys. there will be plenty of crossover between who Penn State's really targeting in 2026, even 2027. My article, I just kind of focused on 2026 just because it's, what we're going to be really focusing on this fall. But there are, I think, I have 6, 7, 8 guys that really, I think Penn State is seriously considering. There's more if you look at really who all they've offered. There's probably closer to a dozen or so. But when you really narrow it down, look at who's been visiting, look at who they've been, visiting on the road and really pressing hard for, I thought there were about 7 or 8 guys that I think are intriguing, to just keep an eye on here. I'll run through a couple of them real quick. Travis Johnson, wide receiver out of Virginia. He has strong ties to West Virginia. His dad played for the Mountaineers. I believe it was 2000 to 2003. And his brother is currently on the roster. TJ Johnson, he's a redshirt freshman wide receiver, I want to say. Look, Penn State obviously has 2 wide receivers committed already. There's a big net obviously cast there. But right now, I would have Travis as one of those top 5, 6, 7 guys that they're really seriously considering and going to push hard for. I think did we break down the 26 receiver board last week? I think we did in the podcast.
August 20th, I believe it was.
Yeah, so that would have been somewhere last week. But so I think if you guys watched our show last week, we did hit on Travis and kind of where he stands on the board. And, look, 6'2", 175, certainly got to add some weight and size, but it was certainly an impressive route runner when I got to watch him in Baltimore down at the Under Armour camp in May. So he's going to be a guy I think that they are seriously considering. And like I said, strong ties to West Virginia, but he's actually visited Penn State, I believe, 4 times so far. Last visit was the blue-white game. So keep an eye on him moving forward. I think Carter Scruggs, offensive lineman, another player out of Virginia, is another player to really kind of focus on. I would have him as is it fair to say he's one of Phil's top interior lineman prospects, do you think, Sean?
It's so early for interior linemen in 2026 in terms of their development right now. Like, it's going to be a board that shakes itself out in the junior season, because it's not. He was at camp, and I don't think he was like crazy like at camp. So like there's a couple of those guys that, like Kevin Brown, we talked about that are no brainers right now. But I think there's a big chunk of guys that he's going to evaluate in their junior season and see what's up. But Scruggs is certainly in that mix.
For sure.
Is that a kind of plateau thing when it comes to guys who develop early and then you got to see who continues to grow? Because it does seem like that's one of the areas, Fitz, when we talk about these players. Receivers may be different than offensive linemen. Is that fair, Fitz?
Yeah, I mean, you see how they grow. You see how they, their body fills out. I mean, he's already a big kid in terms of weight. So how does that fill out? How do those feet come behind it? We've seen it in the past where guys that blow up early, I'm blanking on Antonio Tripp, for example. We thought Penn State was going to go to Penn State because it was a no-brainer McDonough. And then, kind of goes along. His career progresses. He doesn't grow a ton. And, he doesn't show everything that, you thought you wanted as a freshman, sophomore, whenever they offered him. And then all of a sudden, there's a bunch of guys that develop late. And especially on the interior is tough, man, because you look at what's the prototype, 6'5", 300 or something like that. If you're 6'5", 300 going into your junior year, like, what is the physical upside there? And there's been a lot of guys that have been that size and haven't really made it. There's obviously guys that have, but you have to ask the questions there at that position, especially because it's very, I'm going to say it's easy, but like, you're 6'5", 300 in high school, you better be kicking some people around. So that's kind of how I look at it. So you can certainly go up from that. Cooper Cousins, one of those guys, certainly went up from there. But it's gonna require taking a look at, and I don't think it's as cut and dry at those positions as those guys mature and 16, 17 years old continue to grow.
For sure. And that's why I threw it to you, because I want to get your opinion on that, because I've been thinking about it. Yesterday I wrote in there that, I expect him to be one of the top. And then I kind of reread it again. And I was like, that may have been a little premature putting that in there. But long story short, he
Merrill,
is.
Right. We talked about, we'll keep coming back to this. We talked about Tyler Merrill, and he's a good prospect, but like, is he what we thought he was a year ago? Like, it's hard to say. So I'm very interested to see his junior film.
Yeah. Junior film will be massive for these guys. One thing I will say with Carter, he's got a heck of an offer list. Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Michigan. There's a bunch of others. West Virginia, of course, is one of those schools as well. And he will be back for the whiteout in November, which feels so far away, but I feel like we're going to be talking about guys visiting for the whiteout for the next 2 months, because everybody I've been hitting up lately, they're like, yeah, I'm definitely coming for either Ohio State or Washington. We got a couple Bowling Green and Kent State guys in there, but not a ton. So keep an eye on him. Run through a couple others real quick. Matt Sieg, safety out of Fort Cherry, McDonald out in Western PA. This is a guy that Sean and I thought could maybe be committed by now. And of course, he's in no rush to decide, but he's a player who has been to Penn State a ton. Penn State was the first school to offer him, which I think kind of stands out to me a little bit considering he's from such a small school. They did, I think, a pretty good job scouting him and getting on him before most others, because now he's got an offer list that's, not up to 24 or anything like that yet, but it's certainly growing. USC, I think, was one of the more recent schools to offer there. But safety prospect, I think a lot of people, if you follow PIAA football, saw what he did as a quarterback last year, which was pretty insane stat wise. I mean, he's going to end up being, if he continues to do what he did last year, he's going to absolutely be one of those guys in the record books as a quarterback down the road. But at the next level, most likely a safety, at least for Penn State, definitely a safety. We'll see if other schools, are interested in him as an athlete or anything like that. But he will also be back at Penn State next weekend. So he is one of those Bowling Green guys that we'll be talking about next week at this time. But I think a really important prospect for Penn State as far as just the fact that they were on him earlier than everybody else. His stock does continue to rise. And I did wonder at times, like, is this a guy that you offer early and then, see where things go? And of course, to some degree, that's the case with everybody who's just now entering their junior season. But all the feedback I've gotten so far is that, if Matt Sieg wanted to commit tomorrow, he could. So another guy to keep an eye on. Sean, anybody you want to hit on? I can go through everybody if you want. I don't know if there's anyone you want to talk about. You got Dazeel Hart, you got Colson Gatton, you got Shane Alston, a bunch of guys in there.
Yeah, I'm Caden Gebhart, certainly interesting to me because he's a guy that worked out at linebacker and safety for Penn State, I believe, at camp, and obviously a former teammate.
Or at safety, and then they moved to the linebacker. So
yeah, there you go, getting ahead of the game. So that tells me they see some things that see him growing into a linebacker. Gebhart and of course Colson Gatton, whose father played at Penn State, is always interesting. But yeah, it's a good list. I mean, it's a really good opportunity for West Virginia. Great atmosphere. It's kind of selfishly saying this, kind of a shame it's a noon kick. But it's going to be a wonderful atmosphere. I can't wait to see it.
James Franklin's very happy it's a noon kick, but go on.
Oh, absolutely. For me,
I'm also happy
I care about me here. Like that's the thing. But no, it's going to be a wonderful atmosphere. I'm sure those guys will be impressed.
Yeah, I'm also happy because the BWI Live postgame show won't be going live at 12:30 and going to 1:30, which, by the way, we got a great weekend of content. I'll talk about that in just a little bit because I do want to get to some of these things. One thing that I'm interested in, you don't have to name any names, and you don't have to even say yes or no. I'm just going to relate a story, and if you want to comment on it, you can. I talked to Dakari Nelson, I think in 2021, here on the BWI Live show. And he was an attendee at the Penn State Auburn game in 21 and was actually a guest of Auburn. Obviously, he wasn't going to be a guest of Penn State, so he got the whole deal visiting Auburn. And then, he's in the crowd quietly rooting for Penn State. Do you think some of the players here that we're talking about are doing that?
Yes and no. I mean, Again, look, Colson Gatton's dad played for Penn State. Kevin Brown's already committed. Is Kevin Brown going down the game? Actually, no, never mind. He plays. He plays McDevitt on Saturday. Matt Sieg's a guy that I've talked about a long time that grew up a Penn State fan. Now at the same time, I think those guys are also taking their recruitments very seriously. So I'm not going to sit there and say they're going to be shaking white pom poms and wearing Penn State shirts. That's not how that's going to work. But I think both of those guys, are seriously considering West Virginia as well. And at the end of the day, you can grow up a Penn State fan. You can, have better ties to that program, have better relationships and all that stuff. But also your recruitments have to play out. And, at the end of the day, is Penn State, are they both absolutely no-brainer takes in 6-7 months from now? Time will tell. I think right now they both would be, but who knows when it comes to other commitments and all that and how the class plays out. But, guys, there are certainly guys on this list who grew up following Penn State. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, there's an element of that, but they're there as guests of West Virginia. They obviously you look at this list and it's not only a good list of players, but it's also a list of good kids. They're going to be respectful. They're going to do everything they can. If Penn State wins, they're going to text them afterwards. Absolutely. That's basically how everybody would do it. But it's I think it's time to look at sort of the parameters here. Penn State and West Virginia are 3 hours apart. It's a very, like, Pittsburgh's there, Ohio's there, Fort Cherry, of course, the thriving metropolis of Fort Cherry is there. So like all these overlaps are there, and it's going to happen. So all these guys expect to end up at Penn State games at some point too. I mean, it's also the comment we have when Penn State hosts Ohio State or Michigan. It's like, oh, this guy's just coming to watch it. It's not really the case.
Right.
You get it in the back of your mind, of course, but at the same time, I mean, they're going to be guests of West Virginia to watch what West Virginia has to offer in terms of atmosphere, in terms of interactions with their coaching staff, because you're going to see that. You're not going to see that on the Penn State sideline from all the way across the field or wherever they sit them. So, yeah, I think that's probably a little overcooked. I think Dakari was committed to Penn State at that time.
He might have been.
Went to the Auburn game, which was, a little bit of a different story. But, these guys are taking in a game. They get free tickets to watch one of the top college football games in the country. I think it's the top ticket on Game Time this week. So it's a really cool experience. I'm sure they'll soak it in.
Mech Engineer here in the chat donating to the channel. Always appreciate everyone's support. He did say, though, got to run, hold down the fort, fellas. Appreciate you. As always, you can watch it on replay. And if you are watching it on replay or you're here live, like the video, subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on our YouTube channel, because we've got all kinds of great stuff coming up this weekend. Just to run that down for you right now, we have a tailgate show, as we did last year in conjunction with Seven Mountains Media. That is going live 3 hours before kickoff. If you can do mental math, that's 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I can't, so I had to do that before we started. So 9 a.m., we're going to be doing a 90-minute pregame show with former Penn State offensive lineman Landon Tangwell. He and I are breaking down the game as only two football nerds can, getting into all the details. We're going to have, of course, I'm going to ask him about the Penn State offensive line and the Penn State defensive line, and we're going to get into all of those things that he thinks are the key matchups of the game, breaking all of that down and then giving predictions at the end. And then afterwards, these guys who are at the stadium, or whoever's going to be at the stadium, I actually don't know who's going to be there, going to give you their thoughts, live instant analysis after the game from the Blue White Illustrated team. We'll have James Franklin's press conference. The number one place for when James Franklin speaks is the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. I'm not just saying that. That is a fact. Those are statistical numbers. So join us here for his conversation and his talking points after the game. And, of course, the BWI Live post-game show will be here immediately following the game to give you, as best I can, instant analysis of what happened and why it happened in the only way that I can do it, which is to try and give you your emotional bloodletting if they lose and be happy for you if they win, but also tell you what happened as best I can based on what I saw during the game. So a full game content weekend coming for you with Penn State, West Virginia. Let's talk about the game, guys, because you both have written your predictions over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, which are up right now, but we're going to talk about them here on the show. And as I said to Fitz on Tuesday, this is going to be a long week of West Virginia preview because there's no game to review. So we're getting into part 3 of our West Virginia preview, and I saved some of the good stuff from Fitz for today so we could get into it right before the game, our last live show before game day. So Fitz, biggest Penn State X factor in your opinion in this game?
I think it's the defensive line. Unquestionably, in my mind, the best unit on the field. Like that's, I think there's obviously depth, talent, speed, all that kind of stuff. A lot of it goes to Penn State. West Virginia's lost a couple of really good offensive linemen. They're going to replace them, but they have experience up front. So, I don't think it'll be a catastrophic drop off or anything like that, but also Penn State has experience. They've got grown men up front. So I think that is a situation where they can really, maybe West Virginia hits a couple runs early, but like buckle down and stop the run and make Garrett Green beat you. He's certainly capable of doing that, especially with his feet. But it's a situation where I think you keep him in front of you. You don't let him, slide back in those little pockets that he found last year. He had 71 rushing yards last year. And a stat that really surprised me. So just 2 sacks last year. There was 3 sacks total. The one was one of the worst 4th down calls I've ever seen with the backup in there. But Garrett Green took 2 sacks for 6 yards. So 3 yards a sack. That is really good in the sense, like, if you have to take a sack, get close to the line of scrimmage, keep yourself as close to on schedule as you can. This is a smart quarterback. He does some really good things on the run. So excited to watch him play, but I think Penn State's defensive line is really, if you're ranking units by from team to team, I think Penn State's defensive line is the one that can dictate this game.
Ryan, what's your X factor in this game?
That was the same thing I wrote. So that's why I was joking. Like, oh, what am I going to talk about now? To me, it's the interior too. If you want to get specific, I mean, I think Abdul and Denai will get theirs to some degree. Obviously, one of them will be going up against Wyatt Malone. Great tackle, guy that Penn State recruited. but to me, like Devon J. Thomas and obviously Hakeem Beamon, all those guys, Keziah Izzard, like they were solid last year. Can they take that next step? Because Jaheim White's a good running back, like a guy that like I'm not saying.
Yeah,
I'm not saying, if Penn State could do it all over again, they would have recruited him harder, because obviously they recruit on a very good running back level. That's not everyone understands that.
But you swap York and Montgomery, nobody's complaining here.
Right. Yeah. Good point. He's a quality player. So obviously being able to dictate the interior there and be able to keep them contained to some degree, I think that's really what stands out to me. And then also at the same time, Penn State's offensive line too, right? I mean, what all happens there? Because West Virginia brings back a few quality guys, but are they on? They're not, to me, like their defensive line isn't what you see at Ohio State and Michigan. I do think that if you look like statistically and stuff, there's a lot of stats that line up pretty good there for West Virginia. But at the same time, this group has been tested against what I believe is better opponents or better talent from that perspective. But definitely the trenches, man. I mean, you go both ways. I know that's the easy cop-out way. Like you could say that about every game, but to me, certainly that stands out in this one.
Fitz, I wanted to bring up an additional point to your Garrett Green comment about only giving up 2 sacks for a minimal amount of yardage. 15 pressures from Penn State in that game, only those 2 sacks, and he was able to evade that, but also kind of make plays on top of that. That's going to be the thing I think about this game. Just generally, can Penn State take their game plan, which last year I thought was good in terms of how they were managing him in the pocket? They had the opportunity to hit him and get more sacks, but guys kept falling over. Hakeem Beamon fell over on one play. Abdul Carter fell over when he had an opportunity to go track him down. And part of that is Green being elusive, and part of that was them not being kind of in position or not being with their cleats in the ground. I don't know what particularly they were slipping so much for, but that is a factor in this game of how you contain a quarterback, and I thought that Green did a great job with that last year. Let's talk about the quarterbacks then. Quarterback battle. Everyone wants to know the headliners. Drew Aller versus Garrett Green. Quarterback advantage. Ryan, who do you think has the advantage?
I got to throw that to me first, man.
If you haven't noticed,
really good against West
Virginia
snake
last draft.
Let's start with that. Yeah. Was that maybe his best game last year? I mean, there's certainly some statistical games that I think were a little bit better, but like as far as your first true game as a starter, he had some really impressive throws in that game. And at the same time, though, Garrett Green was phenomenal after going against Penn State. He wasn't even that bad against Penn State either. To me, I mean, I think if you're looking at last year's production and all that, you kind of lean towards Green a little bit. But like, look, I don't think there's a big discrepancy between them. I honestly don't. I don't have a whole lot more. I can sit here and talk about stats and all that. To me, it's a new season. There's a lot of different X factors that'll play into it, but I think it's more equal than not. Is that fair to say?
Fitz, is that fair?
Frank?
I think so. Whoever. I mean, do you get Drew that you got against West Virginia last year? Because that's pretty good Drew. But at the same time, we got the other body of work that you're not as familiar with. The other thing here is Penn State's breaking in a new offense, quote unquote new offense. So that's going to probably have some wrinkles in it and probably have some growing pains that, maybe end a drive here or there. So I don't know. I mean, Green, like, he's the better. I mean, no doubt Aller's the better pro prospect, but Green gets things done and is a very good college quarterback. Now, is he as good as he was down the stretch last year when he plays Penn State's defense? I don't know. That's a big X factor to me, because I just think Penn State's defense is much, much better than West Virginia. So it's really interesting to see the comparison, because I think everybody is like, hey, Garrett Green's going to do this, Garrett Green's going to do that. And I think he's capable of it. And everyone's like, there are so many things that Drew Aller can't do. And I'm not sure that's the case either. So it's going to extremes on both ends there. But I think that, they even out pretty well. Both, I think, are going to be as good as their running game. And I think Penn State's running game has potential to have a decent day on Saturday. So I think that's kind of what goes to. I mean, it's never just the one guy, right? Like that's kind of what we get into. We get into quarterbacks playing quarterbacks. They're never on the field at the same time. So that's that's kind of where I go back with that. But I think both of them are capable of getting the job done. So I don't have a strong opinion on this one.
I gave some of my thoughts yesterday. Actually, I gave pretty much all of my thoughts yesterday on the show, so I won't go into too many of those things too deep. But one of the things I've been looking at, and I think both guys have room for development. So Garrett Green could become a better quarterback this year. He could have worked on his accuracy and some of his decision making, and Drew Aller could be a more confident player. So those are from a growth perspective for those two guys. I think that's the X factor for the quarterbacks is who's taken a step in their areas of development. And then, as you mentioned, Fitz, Andy Kotelnicki is a big part of this game as well, and how he can help Aller with some of those things that come down to decision-making and maybe taking some of the things off his plate, giving him some easier throws. Because Garrett Green, if you're comparing the two, Garrett Green was in this style of offense last year, and Drew Aller was operating something that in a lot of ways put a lot on his shoulders. So how does he look in a similar offense? I'm super interested in that. This in the chat, because we have to get to this. I want to put an end to this quickly. Mac the Mustard says, I definitely pay extra here, T Frank instead of Gus Johnson. There's a reason I'm sitting with you here on YouTube. Yes, I went to school for journalism and broadcast journalism. I did some play-by-play in college. There is one person everyone hates in every single game, and it's not the ref. It's the commentators. I will absolutely never do commentary for a football game because I don't like it when people don't like me. So we're going to avoid that for the rest of infinity.
All right. If I see the Fox people this weekend, I'll tell them you're not interested. So we'll just pass that along.
I mean, everyone has a price, Fitz, but it's a very high price.
It's not an easy job. It's a hard job.
It's hard.
It's really hard, especially football or hockey, like any of those fast-moving sports. I can do baseball maybe, but that's about it.
Yeah, I've done volleyball, baseball, lacrosse. Not in like it's too hard of a job. Fitz, enough about that. Biggest matchup advantage for Penn State. What do you think it is in this game?
I also think it's the defensive line. I think that the right side of West Virginia's offensive line is rebuilt. And like I said, they've got experience there. Jaquay Hubbard's there. He's a Pennsylvania kid from Sharpsville. But I think if Tom Allen's going to attack, it's going to be on the front face of Garrett Green and on the right side. Wyatt Milam's really good player. Very interested to see what they do with Abdul Carter. They put him on the right side and go against and play that matchup, or if they put him on the left side and give him a chance to go around a veteran player who has played some, but not to the level of, I don't think he's seen many Abdul Carters. So I think that's it. But since I already talked about that, I think it's really interesting to look at this West Virginia defense. It's almost completely rebuilt on the back end. Beanie Bishop was great last year. I'm not going to say his name right, but
Lee Koba.
Thank you. I didn't see him get picked up anywhere, which is just mind boggling to me after watching that West Virginia game last year. He had 13 tackles. He was everywhere. So, yeah. But you got to replace your big guns. And have they done that? I don't know. They've got a couple of linebackers coming back from injury, including Josiah Trotter. But safety and corner, you have no idea what you're getting there. Like, I understand that preseason camp reports are fine, but like, that's a big jump for some of these guys coming from Duquesne, Northwestern, Colorado State, and there was one other one there. So even though Penn State's receivers not a strength, you have the ability to win matchups, I think, against those guys. And if you look at what West Virginia did last year, played off the line of scrimmage. So getting the ball out quick to Trey Wallace, getting the ball out quick to even Tyler Warren is something that I think will be there for Penn State. And then also using those running backs in the passing game. So that back seven of West Virginia, I don't know what to expect, but my expectations are not that high for them.
It was an area that they kind of needed a refresh because there were some things that were not working well within the defense last year. But at the same time, when you turn over that much, even if you bring in guys early, it's difficult to predict it for both teams, I think. Ryan, biggest matchup advantage in your mind for Penn State?
Yeah, it's similar. I mean, I just think Penn State's secondary, I feel much safer about than West Virginia's secondary. And I mean, again, I know that's not a direct matchup, which I think is kind of the question you're asking there, but I know what I know what KJ Winston brings. I know what Jalen Reed brings. Is AJ Harris going to play? Was he at practice last night, guys? I apologize.
Yes,
I wasn't at practice last night. Yes. I think he's going to be a pretty good player. We'll see with Jalen Kimber and some other guys. Let's see how they emerge. But I feel pretty good about Penn State's secondary being able to, for the most part, keep them somewhat contained, not having a 400+ yard, passing game or something like that, where with West Virginia, it's totally up in the air. Go ahead, Sean. I know you want to say something.
I'm curious how Penn State's corners are going to tackle. Like, that's one thing we've sort of taken for granted the last couple of years. Kalen King was really good at playing at the line of scrimmage, playing those screens and playing those quick passes. And I think West Virginia is going to be able to do that, or at least try to do that. They did it last year right out of the gate. At some point, you're going to have to push the ball down the field. And but how's like that was the dig on Kimber, right, when he was at Florida, like not a good tackler. So how is that going to work out? How's Cam Miller going to work out? Harris and all those guys to at least tackling is fantastic. Or turning them back inside where you got a guy like Tony Rojas who can run, run to get out there. So I think Penn State's team speed on defense, very, very advantageous for the Nittany Lions this weekend.
I also think Kimber's tackling is
a
little overrated. Like he had some bad games. LSU, bad game. Florida State, bad game. He also didn't grade out too terribly bad in a bunch of other games too. And I understand those against the biggest of opponents. And don't get me wrong,
it was
I
effort
get it.
At times for me. Watching him this offseason in the portal, there were times where it was, I agree with you. I think he can do it, but I think the question was the want to at times. And him getting bigger this offseason, them talking about that, of being in the Penn State weight program, I think is important, because you're right. It's not ability there for him to tackle. I think that's a very fair point. KJ Johnson to
play corner at Penn State, you got to tackle. Like
yes.
Terry Smith is going to yank you if you don't.
KJ Johnson gives his biggest X factor, and it's Drew Aller at quarterback. But which Drew Aller shows up? Is it Maryland Drew, Ohio State Drew? Which Drew Aller do you get? I think that's
offense is showing up though. That's like the playbook. There's so many questions going into this.
It's a fair comment. I mean, until we see, we saw Clifford eventually get comfortable, but we also saw him when he started at Iowa in 2019 or 10 years ago or whenever it was, like the deer in the headlights look, and Drew has had that at times. So I think it's completely fair. What I will say, circling back around to the quarterback advantage, I think Garrett Green's got to do more to win for West Virginia than Drew Aller has to do for Penn State to win. And I think that's worth noting as well.
Absolutely. I'm a little bit shocked. I don't know if you saw my reaction earlier on the show. I didn't try to hide it because 2 kids, 1 wife, all PSU donated $100 to the channel. I hope that was your intention and you didn't accidentally hit an extra zero. But I don't know if we have thank you. Thank you so much. He says, thank you guys. This Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel brought me into the pay window. I'm assuming he means over at bluewhiteillustrated.com, joining us on the site. And he says to everyone else, how hard is it to watch this and not hit the like button? There's 166 people watching right now for 42 minutes straight. If you are enjoying the show, please hit the like button. You don't have to donate $100. If you want to, I am not going to stop you. Like, there is nothing that I will do to prevent you from doing that. But thank you well done. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
Definitely appreciate
and I want to give you more of what you're looking for, which is some more of this Penn State football analysis and talk, and something that I'm interested in, and I want to get your thoughts on, Fitz. The Penn State offensive line, 3 new starters. Not all of them are new. You've got a veteran in Nick Dawkins. You've got Drew Shelton on the left side, breaking in 2 guys with less game experience on the right side. But West Virginia returns 3 veteran players, 2 starters, and 2 key backups that are ascending into starting roles. So the 4 defensive linemen-ish, because they really play 3, are going to be guys returning into this system. Is that something that you think is an advantage for West Virginia, and how do you think that plays out, I guess?
Yeah, I think West Virginia can take advantage of it. I'm curious to see what they do on the defensive line in terms of getting to Drew. Obviously, Drew is a little bit more statuesque than Garrett Green, so the opportunity for sacks will be there. The opportunity for pressure will be there. Drew Shelton, Anthony Donka, Nolan Rucci, those guys are under the microscope this week. Like, to me, it's not so much about the run game. It's not so much about moving guys. And it is interesting that Fatorma Mulba, the former Penn State defensive tackle, is now starting there, and you kind of know what you're getting. Like, I'm sure he's improved since he left Penn State, but you understand that he is a clogger. Like, he is a space eater. It's going to be interesting to watch him sort of be heads up with Nick Dawkins and see what Penn State does there. I'm curious how much, like, this is just me spitballing, how much of an advantage is that for Penn State to know what you're going up against, truly know what you're up against, as opposed to just the guy that you see on film. So
especially Dawkins, a guy who played against him quite a bit. It's not like it's a Cooper Cousins who probably never met Fatorma Mulba at that point.
Exactly. So I'm very curious to see how that goes. I'm not as bullish on the West Virginia defense as maybe the Vegas line has shown, but yeah, I think they're going to move some guys around. I'll be very curious how the communication comes into this as well. The helmet communication. I mean, do you want that to get to 15 seconds and then you see dynamic shifts on the defensive side of the ball, and that's on both sides. Certainly could see that coming, but I also could see Penn State maybe going a little bit up tempo just to kind of knock that off and get the coverage that they want to get at the 16-second mark. There's things that go into play there. So very curious how that's going to work. I'm thinking that improves communication. I'm also thinking that and we haven't talked about this much, the iPads on the sideline. I think that's going to make a big deal. Real-time film study can make a big deal. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. You probably won't see it from a down-to-down basis, but that's one of those things where you can go back to the well on a play that you missed earlier because you can see all that stuff come together, and it's not just coming from a phone call from up north in the booth on a landline. So finally, we've made it to the 21st century here in college football.
Yeah, we made it to 2015 in 2024 with college football. We'll skip over the last part here. I want to
real quick. Can I talk about one thing real quick?
Yeah, I was just going to throw it to you. Yeah,
the line, because the line moving down to 8.5 has grabbed everyone's attention this week. So I have a buddy of mine who used to work in a sports book in Vegas, doesn't anymore. But we were chatting about this last night.
Not Greg Pickle for legal stuff.
Not Greg. No, it's not Greg. It was my old college roommate. Anyway, long story short, keep this in mind. Up until about later today, tomorrow, the limits for betting are incredibly low. Tomorrow, they change and they become way higher. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Keep an eye on that, because basically what he was saying is he thinks a lot of sharp players are buying down that line to get it under 10, and then they plan to play the opposite side if it's under 10 when those limits raise. So you can put, if you're a sharp better, right, put 20,000 here, 30,000 here, whatever it is. Well, if you come back with $300,000 when the lines or the limits substantially move up, that'll be something to watch. So just keep an eye on that. That's one of his little theories on why we're seeing such a drastic line movement. He thinks that there's going to be a lot of sharp bettors who come back on the opposite side and play that 8.5, play that 9 because they wanted to buy that under 10.
That explains why I couldn't put 6 figures on Colorado tonight. Good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. It might not be that way. Who knows? But I mean, that's kind of just some of his feedback on somebody who actually worked in that industry for a long time.
It's all fascinating to me how that all that works. I mean, it's just and I don't know the half of it, but it's all crazy. And and we say it at the end of every game. It's like, man, Vegas knows what they're talking about. So.
But you can get 7.5 right now too, which is wild to me. I don't think it'll hit 7, but I never thought that line would get below 9. And here we are at 8.5, 8, and even a 7.5 out there. So
that's the stuff you come for here on the BWI Live show. Let's get to it. Perfect transition. Let's talk about our predictions and what these guys think is going to happen in the game. Ryan, keep going. What is your prediction for how Penn State is going to finish this game and how West Virginia and this score is going to play out?
I went with 31-24, so I don't have them covering right around. So I'll be honest. Whenever I pick these, it's really, I'm looking at the line, looking at the total, picking a number somewhere in that ballpark. To me, Nick Singleton. Can Kotelnicki find a way to unlock Nick Singleton? That's the big thing. 2, Tyler Warren, man. He was very good in the red zone last year. Can he take advantage of a West Virginia linebacker core and even a secondary that's there's a lot of questions about right now? Keeping an eye on him down on the red zone. I think defensively Penn State will be fine. I don't really know what we're going to get with Kotelnicki's offense. You guys have been in practice a little bit more than me, but I don't think you've seen a whole lot. No one really does. But to me, Nick Singleton, unlocking him, not seeing that kind of sophomore slump that we saw last year, I have no doubt in my mind that has to be a big part of what Kotelnicki has been trying to stir up here over the last however many months, because he is a true game breaker that we did not see, as that game breaker that we expected to be last year. Katron's going to get those 4 or 5 yards. He's always going to fall forward and get that reliable rush that you need consistently. It's Singleton who needs to be the game breaker. I think you can get that against West Virginia, but at the same time, West Virginia did a very good job against Penn State's rush game, or for the most part, did a pretty good job against Penn State's rush game last year. So to me, Singleton, circle Tyler Warren. Can he be the red zone guy? I think he could be a pretty good threat down there. I think he was tied in the Big Ten for touchdowns last year in the red zone with 6 or 7. So can he build off of that? And obviously, what Drew Aller do we get, and what kind of a playbook do we get? There's so many factors there. I'll lean towards Penn State, but I do think it'll be a little bit closer than I think most Penn State fans would prefer.
Fitz, where are you going with this game?
The opposite. Push back on a couple things. Katron and Nick both averaged over 5 yards a carry last year against West Virginia. It's not a huge number, but it's a move the sticks type number.
Mm-hmm.
If they get to the second level and they make a guy miss, which was their big problem last year, obviously, they've got a chance. I don't know how this secondary is going to tackle. Like you look at, and I'm playing the portal game here where you go out and you find some guys and you don't know if the guy from Duquesne, maybe a freaking stud, the guy from Northwestern, they might be really, really good. Beanie Bishop was obviously tremendous. You just don't know. And I'm curious to see, and you look at that tape from last year, even though it's a different offense, Penn State did manage to break to the second level, then they just didn't take it to the third. Is Andy Kotelnicki in a spot to get Nick Singleton that little bit of space where he doesn't have to rely on his vision as much as he has to rely on just getting away from the guy that he can clearly see? Like his vision,
put the pedal down.
Yeah, put the pedal down and go. And I think that's very possible with Nick Singleton. And I think that you can do that as a runner. You can do that in motion, which I see a lot of motion, I feel. And you can do that as a guy that you can slip the ball to out of the backfield. So maybe this is the game when we start to see some more yards after catch. Like I said, they played off last year. I could see them doing it again. Trey Wallace was incredibly active last year. Like he kept popping up. I thought it was Keandre or something, kept popping up with these, these little swing passes, these little bubble screens, things like that. And he was effective like that. So I think they do that again. I have Penn State 34, West Virginia 17. My flip side there is that I don't, 17 points against this defense, or what we expect this defense to be, is that's actually a good bit of points. So I've seen some of the other guys in the 20s and things like that, but like based off of what we've seen in the last couple of years, and I know it's a new defensive coordinator, I know it's a new setup and guys in different positions, but Penn State playing at the end of August as the deeper team, I think the more talented team, and I'm curious how much better West Virginia is than they were last year. Like maybe in depth, maybe from 1 to 85, maybe they're better, but I'm looking at 1 to 10 where you've got Zach Frazier, one of my all-time favorites, Doug Nestor, Beanie Bishop, Lee Pogba. Those are legitimate players that leave giant holes. And not only do they leave giant holes in that position, but as you see on the offensive line, there's a trickle effect to, moving the guard into center. And then all of a sudden you've got to replace a guard and you've got a new right tackle. So all these things add up to me. And I think Penn State is in a good spot here. And I also will say that I think Garrett Green's going to throw to Cole Taylor a lot, the tight end transfer that was in last year. I think he's going to have a bunch of targets on Saturday. So that's where I'm at with that. Green, tremendous quarterback, running game, tremendous, but is Penn State going to be able to snuff that out? And if you get West Virginia down, they're going to have to throw the ball. And I think that's to Penn State's advantage as well.
So I'll just wrap this up quickly because you guys made a lot of great points. I just want to round back to Nick Singleton, because last year what I observed is the way that West Virginia played their defense. They started a safety at 8 to 10 yards, and suddenly Singleton and Allen found that guy in their face 2 yards after the line of scrimmage, and they struggled at times to break that tackle. What if in Andy Kotelnicki's offense, that guy who's supposed to be there is suddenly somewhere else because he got the run signal? That's what you're looking for in this particular offense to create those explosive plays. So you're not asking Singleton to break that tackle when he first gets the ball and kind of getting his literal feet under him when he gets through the line of scrimmage. I like Garrett Green a lot. I think that he is a really good quarterback. He does some things from an aggressiveness with a football perspective that can keep, as a passer, West Virginia in this game. And some of their receivers, Hudson Clement is very fast, and the kid number 7 is a big physical target down the field that I think if Penn State's corners aren't ready, they could make some of those splash plays to keep them in the game. I have that happening, but Penn State, as you guys have said, the deeper team, 31-21, and I agree with Fitz. 21 points maybe is high, but it also kind of, to me, signifies my belief in Garrett Green and Neil Brown as a play caller, that they'll have a plan. Last year, they had some wrinkles for Penn State, and I think this year they're going to have some wrinkles for Penn State that will challenge the Nittany Lions early and keep them in the game. So that's the main part of the show. This is going to be just a quick recap or a quick preview. I'm going to let you guys decide of the upcoming high school football games. I want to end on some recruiting conversation, as this is our recruiting show. So commits that we saw last week, commits that we're looking for, and games we're looking for this upcoming weekend. Ryan, take your pick on what you want to talk about here to end the show.
Well, my laptop charger is not here, and my battery is at 8% right now. So we're going to move through this pretty fast. Kobe Howard had to be the standout guy to me last week. I thought Darius Dixon had a very good showing against Centennial as well. Love Darius Dixon's aggressiveness. You know, a lot of people saw the interception that was all over Twitter. Had 4 tackles in that game too. But man, what stood out to me about Darius Dixon was just his aggressiveness. He flies all over that field. He does not take a play off. There's so much there after just watching a full game that I completely understand why Terry Smith is very high on this player. He doesn't, run the 4.4s and some of those crazy numbers. That's the few other corners that we've seen over the years, but he is a Terry Smith player through and through as far as the way he plays the game. So want to give him a shout out. But Kobe Howard, I think if anybody watched that game last week against St. John Bosco, made some incredible catches, found ways to make plays with his feet as well in the run game. There's still a lot more we can learn about him. He's going to some great teams coming up in the coming weeks that he's going to go against. American Heritage is one, New Orleans one. There's a couple others in there that I'm missing off the top of my head, but we're going to keep learning about Kobe Howard. But as far as a first impression goes, from coming from a school like Western, who quality South Florida school, don't get me wrong, they have Division I players there, but now at a school like Chaminade, where he's stacked with elite players all around him, going against another school with similar depth, Division I prospects, I thought he more than held his own. So was very impressed with Kobe Howard and Darius Dixon. Those were the guys that kind of stood out to me the most last week. Sean, I don't know if there's anybody you want to talk about. I think Alex Tash had a pretty good game. Jabri Walls-Coleman had some nice stats, 25 carries, 122 yards, 2 touchdowns going against a team from Canada, though. I don't know how the competition there wise, but Tash, Sean, if you want to hit it, I'll throw it over to you if there's anybody you want to discuss. Tash was the other one that stood out to me, though.
Yeah, Tash was good. I watched some of that Chaminade Madonna game, and Kobe Howard was really impressive. I know, it's one of those guys that just produces everywhere he's been, and that continues to be the case. And he did it, in a sense, it's not going to be that easy against Big Ten defensive backs, but he ran away from some guys, which was good to see, because that's the question there with speed. Body control, all that kind of stuff was there, which is really what you like to see from a guy that, that's kind of where you put your stock into with Kobe Howard. So that's good. Jeff Exener had a touchdown. I think he had 3 catches for 90 some yards. He had a 50-some yard catch. Got away with a hellacious push off on his touchdown.
Yes, he did.
But he got away with it. So there you go.
I had the highlights here, but I was distracted because I was putting everyone's predictions for the game up here on the screen. KJ Johnson, David, and everybody else Lee, who put their predictions in the chat. Appreciate you guys giving us your thoughts. Fitz, one last time, what's coming up from you and from everybody at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com?
Oh boy, there's a lot. We are going to talk more about depth charts. We're going to talk more about position battles, where they are heading into the week. We're going to talk more health stuff. If you've mentioned last week, or if you caught it last night, Luke Reynolds is going to play. I said it on Tuesday. He was the 3rd guy we were looking to from that freshman class to play. I think that's. I'm excited for football. I came into this show sweating, and I'm still sweating. So that's kind of where we're at. It's not the humidity, it's just the anticipation. So can't wait.
What's your chance North Dakota State beats Colorado tonight, Fitz?
It's not,
or at least
it's not
takes
0,
them
man.
Wire.
Hey, again, you don't want to play the Dakota teams. You don't want to play the Montana teams. That's all I'll say. I'm very curious. I'm really interested to see how that offensive line holds up, because that's not a deep unit, and they got to grow up quickly. So we'll see what Dion puts together. I wouldn't say it's the most confident I've ever been, but dude, those Dakota teams, man, it's blank Dakota. Whatever they want to do, they usually pull something out of there. So at least it's not the Jackrabbits this time.
Of course, Ryan's got great recruiting coverage coming up this weekend and early next week. We'll be breaking everything down from the Penn State, West Virginia perspective, and the best way to get in all of that, you got to do it right now, because I can't guarantee. We've extended the sale a couple of times. I have no idea when this is over. 50% off with promo code KICKOFF24. Sign up right now. Be like one wife, 2 kids, all PSU. I did that off memory. I appreciate. I appreciate that. Yeah, it wasn't 2 wives. Kickoff 24 is what I'm trying to say. 50% off. Join us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. You're going to get all the information, all the good stuff. I'm Thomas Rankar, Sean Fitz, Ryan Snyder. We will be back next week